Did we just lose?
Oh, I think we're all still here. We'll find out.
Yes.
Hey,
Wait,
everyone.
Brian?
Welcome to tonight's Late Night Happy Hour with Brian Kamenetzky. I'm on your right side of your screen, Andy Kamenetzky on the left, and Sopan Deb from the New York Times. How about that, Andy? The New York Times. Pretty fancy. That's right. Joining
Well,
us.
except for the people that say it's failing.
That's right.
Oh,
Well,
it's
he is on with us at
It's a
1 in the
joke.
morning in New York, so I am
I know.
slightly worried that things are going wrong over there.
Yeah, man, you called me and said there was a family emergency. You need to jump on. So of course I'm going to wake up for that. What place did you leave me?
this is awesome, man. We very glad that we were able to make this work out. We were very happy when you said that you were able to.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. Thanks so much for having me.
If you don't know Sopan, he is the guy who covers the NBA for the New York Times. He used to be their culture reporter. He covered the Trump campaign for CBS, which is interesting. He's also the author of the book Mistranslations: Meeting the Immigrant Parents Who Raised Me, which I am 55 Kindle pages in. I have every intention of reading more. I apologize. It's good.
You bought it, right?
I have
That's
children.
what matters.
Totally purchased it. Absolutely 100%
Yeah,
bought
I don't
it.
care if you read it. Don't read it. I don't care. Who cares if you read it? I just want you bought it.
That's the way we feel about it. Every podcast. Download it from there. We don't care if you enjoyed it. We just need a certain amount of time spent listening. The acknowledgement
Right.
that it was downloaded.
Turn
From
on
there,
the podcast.
if you don't
Turn on
like
the podcast and walk away. It's fine. just leave it running.
Or just
Right.
take us up as a hate listen. We really don't care, as long as you're there.
My wife just walked by, heard me say that I hadn't finished the book, and just looked at me and said, "This is embarrassing." now she's leaving. So she just, I'm going to go look for another husband. Not during quarantine. You're not. You're going to have to wait until after the pandemic. I showed her. So there's a ton that we want to get into, but one of the things I'm just, and you probably get asked this a lot, how do you go from being the guy who covers the Trump campaign to then being the culture writer for the New York Times to then being the basketball writer for the New York Times? How does that work?
So you cut out a little bit there, but I think I got your question, which was how do I go from politics to culture to the NBA? Did I hear that
Yes,
correctly?
basically.
I
With
do
a
that.
little bit of comedy sprinkled in there. Too.
Yes,
Well,
by the way, and you do stand up. Yes.
So there are a couple different things. The each change was kind of a weird one. After the campaign, I was really burned out because when you cover politics, it's really exhausting, it's all encompassing. And when you're covering Trump, this kind of first of its kind campaign, that's doubly tiring because you're waking up at 6 a.m. because that's when he's tweeting. And you're going to bed late at night because he's watching Sean Hannity and he might be on Sean Hannity or whatever. And then in between that, you're going to rallies and round tables and whatnot. I was just exhausted. And I just didn't think that was a healthy lifestyle to maintain. And so I didn't want to go cover the White House after that.
For him or for you?
Yeah, right. And at that point, the Times reached out about me covering culture for them because it was just a bunch of serendipitous things. And they said, you could stay in New York. You don't have to worry about Trump every single day in the way you used to. And you could have a normal life and you can go see theater and write about TV and film. And we know you're a comedian. You could write about comedy. And I was like, wow, that sounds like a lot more fun than just kind of the day-to-day grind of politics. And that's not a knock on politics reporting. Politics reporting is really important. It's far more important than anything I do on a day-to-day basis for the last 4 years. But I sleep a lot more, clearly because I'm still awake at 1 a.m. right now, and I have the energy to do that. But I sleep a lot more. And then in terms of the culture shift to the NBA, the higher-ups at the Times asked me after a couple of years, do I want to go write about the NBA because they knew that I love basketball. But more than that, there is such an overlap between culture and the NBA, right? Like no other sport has as many top players that are like launching production companies. I mean, LeBron James is Space Jam, has Space Jam 2 and has his name on dozens of TV and film projects. Steph Curry, Draymond Green. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so it was useful to have someone who loved basketball, but also kind of understood the way that film and TV works and music, et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of a natural fit. And I was wary of the job at first, to be totally honest, because I was like, do I want something? Because I'll be honest, I don't know how much you guys like followed me on Twitter before I became the time.
Quite a while.
Yeah.
It's like, I was an idiot on Twitter about basketball, right? I was just saying nonsense things that didn't make sense, that were, let's say, because I was a fan, right? But then when you take the job as a reporter, you can't be a fan anymore. And you can't be like, you can't be as much of an idiot. As much, not totally.
Well, not when you're a reporter. If you want to be an idiot, you should just get into sports talk radio. Then you can do whatever you want.
Right. I was going to say, we've found a lot of space to be an idiot.
It's very liberating. You should give it a try.
Right. And so all that is to say that I was really wary at first about taking the job because I was worried I would lose my hobby would become work, and it has. But I've really enjoyed it so far, and it's been fine. So I've had a lot of fun over the last year. Do my bosses regret the hire? That I don't know yet, and that is for a different podcast when you guys have my bosses on.
Yeah, well, that actually is later in the week. At the very least, we'll get Stein.
Please.
But like to your point, like one of the big kind of headlines that flashed through NBA Twitter and all that stuff today and yesterday was whether or not guys would actually be able to wear their clothes into the arena, when down in the bubble. Like, are they going to have to show up in full uniform like it's elementary school and you're going to like the Christmas tournament, or can you do the Russell Westbrook, maybe bad example, but like Harden, whatever it is, these guys show up like that? People were so disappointed when they thought they wouldn't do the fashion walk before games. It turns out, I guess they probably can. We're not sure yet. But like, there's a ton of crossover.
Yeah, and I would just note to all the people that are like, well, are they going to do their fashion walk? There's a global pandemic happening right now, literally surrounding Walt Disney World. There's some things that we're not going to have, like in-arena entertainment. Who knows what that's going to be like? You might not have like the guy coming out to shoot t-shirt guns at half. There's some things we're going to have to live out here.
There will be no red panda.
There will be no red panda, right? I mean, they should have the red panda there because that is one thing that I think is more essential to basketball than basketball.
I actually want to I'm starting to buy into this notion that the Orlando bubble is actually the safest place to be right now in the country. I actually think we should start taking important people like Red Panda and putting her in there because God help us all if something happens to Red Panda. I don't want to live in a world without Red Panda.
Right. Well, this is an interesting point that you bring up about the bubble being safer than the outside world. That's something Adam Silver has said repeatedly, and that may be right. But I think what that brings into scale is just the enormous lengths that both sports leagues, and like corporations, the enormous lengths they're going to have to do. They're going to have to go to like have a business. Like, think about how crazy this whole thing is just in a vacuum. Like the links that they're going to have to go to make places safe. It's absurd, but crazy at the same time.
Well, I mean, part of it, what made the NBA hold off on any of this to begin with was like the optics of testing and this and that, whatever, and like what if something goes wrong? We have to send somebody to the hospital. And as things started to get better and testing was more available and all that, it seemed like, okay, now we have enough leeway. We can actually do this without it being really bad just optically, even if we're not keeping tests from people. And then over the last, like they make the plans, and then over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it just gets, stuff blows up again. I almost said something else other than stuff. And now all of a sudden, it almost seems like something they have to suddenly start paying attention to the optics again.
Yeah, especially with parts of the country that don't have access to testing, and everywhere else where tests aren't coming back within 24 hours or taking a week to get them. And that's a problem the league's going to have to confront. However, the question is whether that's on the league or whether that's on the federal government and the state government. Because when the NBA came up with these plans, and the MLS, they were making these plans in April with the assumption that the pandemic was going to be under control, right? With the assumption that testing would become more widely available, that social distancing would limit numbers, and what ended up happening is that, through various failures in the top level of government all the way down, it exploded. And so now the NBA has to sell this as, look, we came up with these plans, and these plans can survive Florida becoming a hotspot. But I don't think this is what anyone had in mind. Remember that when the NBA initially got postponed in March, Adam Silver had that quote that was like, it's the data is going to drive our return back to the league, whatever the exact quote was. And the data is quite bad. But
yes,
at the end
it
of the
is.
day, well, there's been such an investment, they kind of have to at this point go.
This was actually, I remember, probably in late March, early April, when we were even just starting to hear just sort of the beginning parts, the skeleton parts of the NBA restarting. One of the things that I kept saying was just at some point the NBA is going to have to live with some people not liking the optics of the restart, because it's going to be impossible to do this in a way that feels completely pure to everyone. And I think in earnest they did look to try to make sure that they weren't stressing out resources for the general public, and certainly I think they've gone to do their part that way, and hopefully that won't end up being the case. But initially when they were talking about one positive test and the whole thing shuts down, or we're not going to have any tests that would potentially deprive from anybody, I'm looking at this going, it can't possibly work like that. Like they're going to have to be okay on some level with people being either skeptical about this or feeling like there's certain ethical issues with it, which, by the way, that is happening now. And I understand where the people who find it either skeptical or unethical are coming from some reason. I get it.
And I think that's exactly right. And I think something else that should factor in here is also, it's not like the league decided on its own to come back. The players also want to come back. The players' union was very much, for the vast majority of them, were very much on board with coming back. So it's not like it's just the owners got up and decided, we're like, hey, you 350 players, you are all coming back. We are forcing you into this bubble, and you're going to entertain the masses. The hundreds of players want to come back. Their paychecks, many of them have limited kind of shelf life in terms of how long they can collect. Let's say $15 million a year, because you do that for like 10 years as a professional athlete. They're it's not just the league; it's also the players, I think, that also inevitably bear some responsibility here.
Keep talking for just 1 second. I just got a text from my wife. Can I pull the lemon loaf out of the oven? So I'm going to go do that.
Please.
Andy, go ahead and ask the next question or bring up the next topic. I'll be back in a moment.
Okay. I was confused for a second. I thought she was asking for Brian's permission to pull the lemon loaf out of the oven. I didn't realize she was actually asking Brian to physically pull it out, because knowing Brian's wife the way I do, I found it actually pretty shocking that she would ask for the permission, because A, she's a modern woman, and B, she's a better baker. So I didn't.
Yeah, this tells me that something went wrong with the lemon loaf. Like, we're not seeing your brother again for the rest of the podcast.
No, I feel like
your brother.
Well, my guess is she's in charge. Brian has 3 kids. She's in charge on some level. She's handling bedtime. And can't get downstairs, therefore
here's the problem.
Because I was saying, it sounded for a second like she was asking either your advice or permission to pull the lemon loaf out, which I'm like, that's very unlike Brian's wife.
No, she was not asking for permission to pull it. No, what happens is this: my youngest son, middle child, youngest son, is kind of afraid of everything, and so.
Told you it was a bedtime.
Basically, so they're upstairs trying to go to bed, but if she has to come down, he won't stay up there to actually stay asleep. So he's got to come down with her, and then they're all getting out of bed, and so it's just easier if I pull the lemon loaf out, despite the fact that I am doing this. So, but as the old saying goes, on live,
This is like, this is
TV.
the worst Everybody Loves Raymond episode I've ever heard.
Yeah, kind of.
Like,
right down into it being sports writers.
Right, but look, Sopan, there's a reason that they have in the industry that old television expression. Sometimes you got to put the lemon loaf out of the oven.
yeah, there you go.
It's apropos in moments like this.
Yeah, I bet.
So you work with Mark Stein, and we've known Mark for a while. He was based out in L.A. forever. He's an L.A. native. He is going down to the bubble. Were you at any point on the verge of going to the bubble? Did you want to go to the bubble? Did you volunteer Mark to go to the bubble?
Yeah, I wrote my boss and said, "Hey, I just talked to Mark. He's raising his hand. He'd like to go."
He is all over it.
All of us. So there's three of us: me, Mark, and Scott Casiola, who's out in LA, and all three of us volunteered to go. The way the NBA did it is that there's one swap out for each outlet. So meaning that only two people can go, and so there's three of us and there's two spots. So Mark is doing the first tour, assuming he survives to see the next tour. We'll like, no, I'm just
sound like he's going to war.
No. So Mark, we all volunteered to go. I kind of look at it as like, I was joking with my boss this morning. I was joking that I was like, it's the kind of party that like is thrown by someone you don't like. Like you wouldn't go, but you want to be invited. You know what I mean? Like you don't really want to go.
We've talked about this. Like what Brian and I wanted to do, because it was obvious that the media presence was going to be extremely limited for this thing. Because, I mean, normally, like, I would assume you've covered an NBA Finals, and we have. The amount of media is insane at an NBA Finals, or even just like an NBA Western Conference Finals. Like, there's just tons and tons of international media. But this time around, just for practicality and safety's sake, it was going to be extremely limited. What Brian and I wanted to see happen, because it would be entertaining, and it's no skin off our back, because we knew we weren't even in contention. We wanted like a very public choosing of the people who'd end up, the NBA people who'd end up going to the bubble. Because like you said, there are a lot of them that don't want to go, but they all want to feel important enough to go. So like we wanted this to be like, the NBA All-Star Game, how in the last couple of years they've done it like picking teams. And every year it started to become a little bit more public in terms of the two captains, the way they pick it, because that's more awkward and that makes for better TV. We wanted the same thing for media. Like just like the idea, you start getting like down to like 8 have been chosen, and like Rachel Nichols is looking around like, am I going in?
I felt a little bit like Al Horford a couple of years ago. I think Al Horford was picked last. I think I'm the Al Horford.
But at least you'd be getting picked. Like that's the thing. At least you'd be getting picked. Like it starts turning into like the guys who show up for the NFL draft in the green room.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's looking like they're not going in the first round. Those guys I feel bad for. But for NBA media, that I'd find hilarious. I'm not going to lie. Because again, I'm not getting invited anyway.
Right. No, I will say I'm very fortunate to work for an outlet that, saw this as a worthy thing to invest in, because it is an investment.
It's extraordinarily expensive. It's extraordinarily expensive.
In a time when a lot of media outlets are struggling financially, it's not a guarantee that outlets can afford something like an expenditure like this. So I'm very grateful that we the Times was willing to invest in it, and you know what, like Mark is I don't know, so you guys know Mark pretty well. Mark's a great. Beyond being a great colleague, he's a great guy, and so there was a part of me that was like when he got to go, there was a part of me at first my reaction was, oh, I don't get to go to this thing, like, oh, but Mark gets to go, so that's fine. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like there was no like animosity or anything like that.
It's an honor just to be nominated.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just to be nominated. That's right.
Hey, Brian, really quickly, on the Periscope, Monty _10 is asking us what VS Liquor pairing would go well with the lemon loaf. The show brought to you by vsliquor.com, the most convenient way to get your alcohol delivered to your door. Anything you want, one click on its way. And right now, if you type out sports in your checkout, you get 15% off that first order. vsliquor.com. Unfortunately, Sopan, I don't believe they deliver to New York. You can
only
try.
one way
Not
to
with
find
that
out.
attitude. Not with that attitude.
I mean, I guess if you order something big enough for your first order with that 15% off, maybe they'll make an exception. But Brian, VS Liquor pairing for the lemon loaf?
I would say some vodka. It's hard to go wrong with vodka and lemon. It's a classic fare. I would also like to point out that I too was going to seg into the product, the sponsor mention. And your way was actually better than the way I was going to do it, which is just mentioning the fact that the New York Times, while subscriptions I hear are up, may not have the money-generating machine that is the Late Night Happy Hour sponsored by vsliquor.com, the easiest way to get liquor delivered to your door. Both of which are good, but you actually involved a viewer, so that's good. Your way is better.
They're part of the show.
So we have a lot of stuff to get to with the NBA and stuff like that. But one of the things, so I was reading your book, Mistranslations is the book. It's called Meeting My Immigrant Parents for the First, Meeting the Immigrant Parents Who Raised Me. Your description of the first date that you went on with, well, I presume still your girlfriend. I haven't gotten to the end. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, no, she's still with me, man. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
She's
the girl who you were dating on page 40. Like I don't want to say how it goes.
Especially if your current fiance doesn't know about it. Right. All of a sudden, it really gets awkward.
Oh no, guys! She's just my side piece now. Oh wait, I shouldn't have said that out loud. It reminded me that you talk about how you were like nervous and basically, kind of leaned back on your comedian roots, and it was like a stand-up routine for however long you were out there. It reminded me of exactly how my wife talks about our first, where she's like, I didn't realize 13 years later, we've been married for 13 years, you'd still be using the same material. Like I used all of it on our first date.
You gotta go to the hits, man.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? No one goes to like a Billy Joel concert and gets excited to hear like, hey, I got a new song to play. No one wants to play Big Shot in My Life, man. That's all we want to hear. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, but Big Shot was a lot more popular than a lot of Brian's material. Like that's the problem. Brian's material, that is the B-sides.
I had one date's worth of great material. You just got to recycle it and figure out ways to keep it fresh. I mean, that was really the issue. But I thought I saw that and I was like, oh my God, like that is absolutely just a truism that I would suspect runs through like everybody's first dates. Like if it's somebody that you like.
You have to have a couple go-to lines that will make the other person laugh. My problem was that I never came up with more than a couple because I always assumed that I would never see the person again. You know what I mean? Like the person on a date would quickly realize what a putz I am and then like move on to whoever is next on her list. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you got to come up with my problem was never coming more than the initial couple lines that would make the other person laugh.
Was your assumption that you'd never need more material than just like the first or second date? Did that reflect a lack of confidence as a dater or as a comic? That like you wouldn't need the stuff?
Is there an option C for all of the above?
The answer is yes. Just yes.
So the biggest mistake with Wesley on our first date was I was so nervous and hyped up that I just like talked too much and talk too fast. All this restless energy that had to come out. And thankfully, Wesley, walked out of that first date and was like, this guy's kind of crazy, but if he calms down, I can see myself going on a second or third date. And the subsequent dates, I thankfully calmed down. And by date 12, I had ramped up because by then she was stuck with me. So.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody knows that once you get to date 12, you're legally not allowed to leave. That's it.
Yeah, that's the point too. You start stealing other comics' material. Like at that point, you're just going to different concerts on YouTube or hanging out at clubs, taking notes.
Yeah.
as territorial as comics get, I think if you explain to them, like, look, I'm not stealing it from my act, I'm stealing it from my relationship.
Yeah,
I think that'd be cool.
It's for love. You know what I mean?
Because that's that's a real big pissing match, like you've seen with comics, like the ones that have the reputations for stealing, like that stuff can get ugly.
Really, and rightfully so. I think comic stealing material is now there's a lot of like accidentally taken material, like people that don't do it on purpose, and like that happens because like very few comics like have truly original takes on something, right? Like very few. And they, of course, exist, and that's why they're the most amazing comics among us, and they're the ones making millions of dollars and get to be in movies and get specials whenever they want. But like, there are very few comics that like look at like a relationship or dating and go, "I have something that no one has ever said about this." You know, it just doesn't happen very often. You know, every now and then someone comes up with something truly original, but it's very rare, I think.
Well, go ahead, Eddie.
I was going to say, it reminds me of, I remember a playwriting class that I took in college. And on the first day of this class, our professor told us, if you're right now, because she immediately had us start writing a play, like from day one, our first assignment. And she said, if you're racking your brains trying to come up with the most original, mind-blowing concept for a play, stop. Because they've pretty much all been told by the time like Shakespeare and Greek mythology was done. Like it pretty much, the themes were covered. It's all just about the way you ultimately retell these themes and these stories.
So it's funny you mentioned that. I consider myself more today, anywhere in 2020, way more of a storyteller than I do a comic. So even when I do stand-up sets, like I'm telling a lot of true stories and trying to make them funny. And I think what is a better way to approach writing and approach playwriting, or whether it's a script or whether it's, you know, a memoir or whatever, it's honesty. Mm-hmm. Like honesty, I actually think, is the best way to because you're right. You're not going to go. That's one of the first things you're taught in improv class. You're taught to yes and
Yep.
And the second thing is to be honest. So if your scene partner says something like, "I'm a doctor," and you have cancer, you know, you can't react and be like, "Whoa, is that Godzilla outside?" You know, because you're going to lose the audience like that. You know what I mean? And so I actually, you know, one of the things that I've, you know, because I'm working on some new writing projects and whatnot, one of the things I keep reminding myself is don't try to swing for the fences. Just be honest. How does this conversation react to the next break? You know, does this make sense? And is it true? You know, is it true to who you are? And I think that ultimately makes for a better product.
Well, it's and figuring out what that is, because this is something that, you know, dive into the details as much as you want. Again, anything that happens before page 55 in your book, I'm like well versed on. But like, how sort of to get to that place where like what is, you know, what you're being honest about, and like how frank you can be, what you're comfortable being honest with. It's a hard thing to really genuinely, truly be honest in front of other people, first of all, but then just to be honest with yourself. Like if you're going to be talking about yourself, your life, and all that stuff. Yeah.
So for the memoir, for Mistranslations, I made a decision before writing the first page that whatever this was going to be unvarnished. Like whatever you may think of the book, by the time you get to the end of the book, you're going to say to yourself, "I didn't like this," or "I liked it, but this was quintessentially Sopan." You know, and that's so. And so as the book, which tracks the year of my life, to try to reconnect with my estranged parents, like as I was writing chapter 8, I didn't know what was going to happen in chapter 16 because it literally does track an arc. It's more like a journal in a way. Honestly, like I didn't want to do this unless it was going to be honest, which meant, you know, really diving in deep into my relationships with my parents, really diving in deep into assimilation in the country, diving in deep to like our family dynamics and therapy and all this kind of stuff. But I thought that if I wasn't completely as honest as I could be, like the reader is not going to get as much out of this. And I thought that was, you know, so that decision came before writing page 1, if that makes sense.
Well, I saw it too, like, you talking about in an interview I read about just promoting the book, that there was a point where you realized that a lot of the material you had done on stage, talking about ethnicity and your background and those type of roots, that in a lot of ways you felt like you were playing the role of a comedian with that background, as opposed to actually really exploring what it meant to be that guy. Like it was almost like a shield or a defense mechanism.
100%. That's what comedy was for me. It was therapy, but it wasn't until like my late 20s, that I realized that, this is not, you're just, A, you're not a very good comic, and B, you're not a very good comic because
I ran out of material on my first date.
but you're not like genuine on stage. You're not. You're doing this version of like an Indian guy telling stereotypical jokes. Yeah, you're getting some laughs from crowds, but you're not putting any original thoughts out there. And so in the last couple of years now, I do stand up a lot less now, in part because of the pandemic, and more because I'm much more interested in comedy writing. But in the last couple of years, I've really strived to like tell more genuine, honest stories about myself, because audiences can sense disingenuity from you. Audiences can sense, they know when you're just another guy telling schlocky jokes about being brown or your dating life or whatever. They know, but when it's real, they also know that. And I found my stand-up experience changed a lot once I started telling stories and being honest with the crowd. But first of all, being honest with myself.
I will say this, and you do have, there's a short little thing in there, an anecdote about like the first joke you told, and it was like talking about race relations and asking if anybody, if anybody has ever had sex during a NASCAR race. And I laughed. So you said the joke bombed, but I'm like, that's a joke about race relations. That's funny to me.
Yeah, so joke bombed. I remember doing it at this open mic. I did it once. I never did it again. I remember doing it I think it was like 8 years ago, maybe even more than that. I don't even remember at this point. I remember telling the joke. I remember it was my first time doing stand-up in front of a crowd. I remember that was the first joke I told. And I remember the crowd just nothing. And then a couple seconds go by, and you hear this one voice from the back of the room go, "Ha!" To this day, I'll never forget that. The first time I went on stage and made somebody laugh. And I don't know who that guy was, but I'm really grateful to that guy. Because I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I just made one person who I don't know, who's not my friend, laugh. And like, that's a really gratifying feeling, even though the joke stinks.
No, it's not. But you know what? That's not. It's sort of maybe a tough opener. Like like, you know what I'm saying? Like that. It's got kind of a Stephen Wright sort of feel where like, wait a minute. Oh wait, okay, no, that's the joke. Race related. I got it now. But like that one guy in the back of the crowd, he's obviously very quick.
Yeah. Right.
But it's funny though, when you were talking about how you decided to open up more as a comic and be honest, and some of the stuff you were doing was kind of stereotypical or playing to the cheap seats. It's really hard, I think, not just as a comic, but I've done improv before, like in that space, or I think a lot of times in radio with what we do, or on social media, like the instant gratification, in particular as a comic in the form of laughter, it's very hard to eschew that. Like it's very difficult to say like, all right, I'm going to risk not getting the laugh. Like I'm gonna risk not going there.
This is why I don't perform as much anymore. In part because, the crippling anxiety. So the thing about a true stand-up, like someone who really like a true stand-up has to believe when they're walking on the stage that they are the funniest person in the world, right? There's no, you have to have that level of confidence, and that if the audience doesn't laugh, it's not because your joke is bad. It's because the audience is not at your level. I'm not correct. I'm saying that's the way you have to mentally think.
The improv group that I was in, our tagline was, "If you don't get it, you're dumb." And like some of the times they didn't get it, it was in reality on us. But like you said, like you kind of have to have that mindset. Otherwise, you will have no confidence. Like
it's not unlike though what guys do in the NBA. Like there are like Damian Lillard. Maybe he doesn't think he's better than LeBron, maybe like in the back of his mind or whatever, like in his deepest parts of his soul. But pretty much anybody else, Damian Lillard thinks he's the best player in the NBA.
Paul Pierce, after the Celtics beat the Lakers in 2008, he won the Finals MVP. I remember he gave a quote that was like, "Oh yeah, I'm the greatest player in the world." But like, if you watch Paul Pierce, if you watch his kind of demeanor, he definitely thinks that.
Yes.
When he played, he definitely thought he was the best player in the world. Of course, like, you're right. I don't think if you gave him truth serum, he thinks that, but he certainly played like it.
It's like Paul Pierce, maybe. I think Paul Pierce has actually convinced himself of all this stuff.
Well,
like, he's the one guy that I think,
okay, I'm not putting up the numbers, but if I did X, Y, and Z, if I played here and got to do A, B, and C, whatever it is, he was like, I would be the best player in the world. I just, I don't get to do it. Damian Lillard, it's like, okay, I'm in Portland, I got to carry the team, whatever it is. But like, these guys believe, like the best of them at least, believe that even the more mediocre guys probably believe that if I had this role, I could be an all-star or whatever it is, in part because they grow up being the best. They legitimately are like the best players at everything that they ever touch.
Right. I mean, they spend their entire lives, right? Like being told you're the best, you're the leading scorer. I mean, I think Kendrick Perkins in high school averaged something like 30 points and 20 rebounds, something crazy like that. Like, and that's Kendrick Perkins. And that's not, I mean, look, Kendrick Perkins had a very good career in the NBA. It's not a knock on Kendrick. I'm just saying that,
he's Kendrick Perkins. We understand.
He was not prolific as traditionally defined in the NBA.
Well, Andy and I, when we first started with ESPN the magazine, we would do a lot of stringer type work. And one of the things we would go in there and we talk to athletes, we'd ask them just a bunch of questions for the front of the magazine. And one of them was always like, what's the sport you were worst at? And if they couldn't come up with like golf because either they didn't go, like most of these guys, like almost in any sport, it was like none. It was like whatever they tried, they were awesome at it because they're another species to be able to go and be able to play at that level. If you can be a pro, of course you were the best on your team at everything that you ever did.
I know we're way off topic here, but following up on that point,
there's no such thing as off topic.
No.
Fine. Michael Jordan going to play baseball in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 1994. And him actually managing to hit 200
is incredible.
In semi-pro baseball is one of the most amazing things ever.
No. It's completely pro. It was double A.
I mean, it was
You're two steps away.
It was just like, I'm sorry, like, how many people in the world could right now in 80 minor league AA games hit 220? 1,000? I don't know what the number is. It's probably not more than a couple thousand.
And they're all baseball players. They're like all actual baseball players. Like,
let me rephrase that. How many in the world could hit 220 without ever having played baseball full time before? But that list has got to be in the hundreds. Yes.
Somebody needs to go back and do a documentary on like the golden age of guys playing two sports. Like
Deion
Sanders, Bo Jackson, Brian Jordan. With the
Brian Jordan.
Remember? With the Falcons and the Cardinals and the Braves. It's like, and it's like, was Brian Jordan awesome at baseball? Like, I think he made an All-Star team maybe one year, and maybe he didn't. I don't remember. But the guy had like a 12-year major league career and also played football. Like,
did any of them win championships in multiple sports? I think Deion came the closest because I think he played for one of the Atlanta Braves World Series teams, but I think they lost. It was on those Braves teams that lost to the Blue Jays in the early 90s. But I don't think any of them have rings in multiple sports. It doesn't matter, but whatever. I'll also say is
it's such a hot take, like sports, like 2020 sports. Like, yeah, they played two sports and maybe made Pro Bowls and All-Star teams, but count the rings.
They didn't make anyone better.
It was more a wonderment of the fact that I just remember. Okay, this is going to date me quite a bit. I have at home my uncle lives in Toronto. Okay. Big Blue Jays fan. And the Blue Jays won the World Series, was it 92 and 93? So remember how after every season they'd make like the championship videotape or whatever, like the official, the glossy interviews with the players. Yeah, this is what it was like to be the ALCS or whatever. And I have somewhere, I think at my mom's house, the VHS of the Blue Jays, their championship season kind of video. And in it, one of the dramatic parts is Deion Sanders for the Braves stealing a bunch of bases in the World Series and almost turning that series in the Braves' favor. And he's a football player.
Yeah. It's like that type of just multifaceted athleticism. Like Matt Barnes, before he eventually ended up carving out his NBA career, like Matt Barnes had to really claw to just get into the NBA, much less stay there. Like he debated going the NFL route and likely could have done it. I mean, he was like all state, like high all state as a high school player. Like LeBron, if he wanted to go to the NFL, LeBron absolutely would have gone there. I think he was all state as a sophomore, as either a wide receiver or a tight end. Like as a sophomore, he was insane. Like any sport LeBron ever had wanted to do, he would have been like the greatest ever. Like he just would have.
I mean, the physical gifts there are, and you know what, I shouldn't call them gifts because he actually, I will say to LeBron's credit, he also spends a lot of time on his body in a way that I am unwilling to do, really, which is why I'm podcast at 1 a.m. and LeBron is not.
Right, but also, but it wouldn't matter. I mean, like you and the three of us could do whatever we want to our bodies for 24 hours a day, and it just doesn't matter. You don't buy
the Malcolm Gladwell theory, the 10,000 hours?
No, not for that. I don't. I mean.
No, I remember. Do you remember last year LeBron missed what was it, like 20-something games or whatever with that groin strain? The first practice back that the media was able to attend, that LeBron was back to practicing with the Lakers. I remember Brian and I were both at this practice, and it opens up, and the guys are still scrimmaging, and LeBron is practicing as he often does, shirtless. And this is LeBron's, one of his first practices back, like during this period where he hadn't been playing basketball at all. And he's like shredded, except like this is his version of dad bod. Like at this point, because he's just been out of shape, like, by his standards, not working out. It's like, this is ridiculous. Like
it's deeply offensive is what it is.
Like for me, like getting up is like, it's not hard, but it's like work. It's like you have to put it feels a little bit more work, For LeBron, like for him, like that level of work is like running 5 miles. You know what I mean? Like that level of inconvenience to him. It's absurd. It's totally absurd.
Yeah, I mean, wait till you get to be, we're a little older than you. Wait another decade and then see what getting up feels like.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I promise you it doesn't get better. If they say that it does, they're lying.
Tell you what makes you feel, as you start to get older though, one thing that makes you feel better, alcohol. The best way to get alcohol delivered to your door, VS Liquor. The great folks at vsliquor.com take that stuff, you order it, they deliver it right to your door, and if you put sports in the checkout, right there in the little code, it says sports, get 15% off your first order.
LeBron's ability to play basketball is only matched by your ability to segue.
We pride ourselves on the segs. We've really leaned into just playing up these segues and making them the game within the game.
Right.
Remember when Eric Gagne had that save streak? That's you guys. With the...
Well, Sopan, the folks at VS Liquor are looking for art.
Yeah, right.
And unlike Gagne, we don't need anything delivered to our houses other than vsliquor.com to make this happen. Like, we don't need any PED or things like that. We can do this naturally.
If you just want somebody to read it, go get Greenberg, Wingo. Those guys will read the thing for you. You want art, you come to us.
Right.
We won't be appreciated until after we're dead, like most artists, but that's okay.
Yeah, you guys are modern day Van Goghs over here.
Yes, but just far less appreciated. So, how do you think this thing is going to, like, once the games get going? Like, what are you expecting to see? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ugly do you think some of these things could look? Like, how long do you think it'll take before it starts resembling high-end basketball? Because the break has been really long.
Longer than a typical offseason.
I have no earthly... The thing is, none of us know. Because in the practices, I mean, we have varying players have varying levels of conditioning. Like Chris Middleton said, I think it was 2 weeks ago, he's like, I haven't picked up a ball in 3 months. So who knows? Some players, I think Mo Bamba, I don't know if you guys saw that, so he put on 30 something almost. He said he put on 30 pounds of muscle. I just don't think that we have any idea, because this is so unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this. And then you have players like Kemba Walker, who, for Boston, who are just slowly ramping up. I mean, he's not even practicing at full strength yet with the Celtics. I just don't know, And I don't know about you guys, but there's a part of me that's like, it's hard for me to think about basketball from an X's and O's standpoint yet, because I keep seeing these headlines, right? I keep seeing these like hotspot, death rate begins to rise, and it just makes I can't help it, just as a human, to be like, man, thinking about how the Lakers are gonna handle losing Rajon Rondo for 2 months. Man, that feels very pedestrian right now. You know what I mean? I don't know that even when the game.
I mean, most Laker fans are going to say they're going to be all right. Right. But that's beside the point.
Let's say Westbrook is out for a significant period of time. Who knows? I'm not at the stage yet, and maybe that'll change once the games start. I'm not at the stage where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to talk about like whether Russell Westbrook's, whether the Rockets can overcome Westbrook being out. It just feels too weird, right?
That goes back to what we were talking about before, where like the idea was we were all like, the country was supposed to be at a place by now. Not that the thing would be gone, it really was like, but like where you would feel okay to be able to talk about basketball, because like the governor of your state didn't just order everybody back indoors. Like it's just, like, it wasn't, the arc of things wasn't supposed to go this way. And now it has.
In places like California, where you guys are, and Texas beginning to either order,
they closed everything back up.
Reclosings or whatever the word is. Same in Texas, and you're like, how can you in the right mind think about basketball? So to your question of like, how do we think this is going to go? From a play standpoint, I think it'll be rough at first, but like, these guys are hoopers, man. They're going to figure this out, right? But from a fan experience, like, I don't know that basketball will serve as the traditional distraction that sports usually serves as. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask, is like, ostensibly one of the reasons that this is happening, beyond the finances of it, beyond all, is like, this is something that can do the country good. I mean, really the world good, as everybody's going through this, like some degree of normalcy that we'll feel from watching sports. I mean, I think you'll even find casual basketball fans, or maybe even non-basketball fans, drawn to this just because it's something new. And, a lot of content that we normally get, however you consume content, isn't being there because different productions are shutting down.
We talk about things as you can be like, well, we'll get this sort of sense of normalcy, but these sports are so obviously abnormal in how they're being presented.
That's what I was going to ask.
I wonder how much normalcy we'll even get from that. Enjoyment, maybe, but not normalcy.
Or comfort. Maybe that's the right word, is comfort.
Yeah, if anything, it might be a harsh reminder to your face of how abnormal everything is. With the lack of fans and stands, with the lack of, traditional in-arena entertainment. You're not going to have Marv Albert because he didn't make the trip to the bubble. You're not going to have a lot of things that made the NBA seem, regular, right? So watching that, will that take you out of it, or will you be able to just focus on the play? I don't know. For me, I don't know the answer to that question.
You won't know until you see it. But if they could let 3 mascots in, like to try to make things seem more normal, who would you invite? Or if not mascots, halftime entertainment. Yeah.
well,
Red
that guy
Panda,
Lucky,
obviously.
You gotta have Lucky out in Boston. That guy's a worker. I don't actually know who are the other. I love the guy that always. I love the bold guy who always gets into fights with. Was it Robin Lopez?
Well, I was going to say, you actually need, what you really need to do to figure out mascots like as far as like the best use of mascots is look at the potential bracket for the Bucks, because you have both Lopi on the Bucks, and they're the ones that make the most use of the mascots. Like,
what's that guy's name? Bongo or Bingo or something like that? Bingo Bongo. They're little dude. I forget.
I don't remember which. I know what you're
one
talking
of those
about.
Things. Yeah,
but I don't remember which team he's on. But like, if you're going to make full use of the mascots, you really need somebody that's going to be playing a Lopi.
Can I ask you guys a question? Do you guys both play? Do you guys ever play basketball, pick up, anything like that?
Not well.
I was close. Bingo,
Bango,
bongo,
yes.
bango. that's what it is.
I
gave it up a couple of years ago.
Like, do you guys think it would be fun to be on the same NBA team, like as brothers?
I mean, first of all, it's not going to be fun for anyone watching
No,
us.
not at our current skill level.
Okay, let me qualify that by saying, let's assume that you have at least some NBA ability. Like you're a rotation. You guys are both rotation players.
Yeah, I mean,
look,
we've managed to stand working with each other for this long. I mean, I think the setting becomes irrelevant. Like there are people I know who tell me all the time, like friends of mine or people that we meet, like I could never work with my sibling. And I don't think it's because of the job that they're in. They can't imagine, like, oh man, you put me in the next cubicle over with my sister, like this thing's going to fall apart. It's not the cubicle, it's your relationship. Right. And we have a relationship that I think would work on a basketball team. I don't think we'd necessarily contribute much unless we become much different players. But the setting, I think, would be fine.
So here's the thing I wonder, because the NBA is so full of egos. And you need touches. You're thinking about salary. You have a short window of time where you can make the most money. And there's so many players in the league that feel aggrieved about, I'm not getting enough touches, playing time, minutes. I don't have the right shoe deal. This guy's making more money than I am. This guy has the mid-level exception. I've got the vet minimum. Blah, blah, blah. And I just wonder, and I don't know this.
I think I know where you're going, and it wouldn't be a problem because I would make more money than Andy. All of those things would work in my favor, so I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, when the dynamics change like that, like I just wonder, like internally, how can familial bonds survive?
Well, do you remember when the Morrises literally shared a bank account? Like they shared a contract. Like they got this is crazy, but they got signed by the Suns basically as like a joint lump contract. And it was like, all right, it's up to you guys to divide up who deserves more of the pie, but that's between you guys. And what I think was interesting about it is early on, I think more of the money went to Markieff because he was considered the better player. Now I think the consensus is that Marcus is the better player. But maybe, I mean, they seem really, really tight, but you wonder if that creates any type of issues between them because, maybe Marcus feels like Markieff got a better deal, like on the earlier end of that.
Right. Like, and like on some level, we're all human, right? Like human, like humans have been given some bad characteristics, jealousy, resentment. Those are all things that I think all of us
have all of them.
Different levels. Anyway, all that is to say, that's just me musing about the things that I think about.
Well, where do you stand on promoting the possibility of, now that they're all in the same place, if one Morris gets knocked out of the tournament early, allowing for a switcheroo?
So I have been so do you remember earlier in like May when they were throwing around a lot of crazy ideas for the bubble? Mm-hmm. Like every team could be in the playoffs, do it like NCAA tournament.
One player gets 7 fouls.
Yeah, they were throwing around all this stuff. And I was of the belief that the NBA should have adopted all of it. Like, what better way because we are, as humans, as NBA fans or whatever, we are so resistant to change, so resistant to anything that might disrupt the way we look at things. So, like, I remember when the shot clock rule got changed from when you got an offensive rebound, you get 14 seconds. right? And everyone's like, that's a terrible rule. How could you do that? How many games in the past 50 years would have been different if the shot clock was, that rule? You're messing with history. To me, like this would have provided the most amazing opportunity for the NBA to truly experiment with things that maybe some of them don't work. Maybe like giving one team 7 fouls if they're at a neutral site. Maybe it doesn't work. But I would have really liked to see some wacky things tried just to see if they work. Because like no matter what, I think this championship, it's going to have there's a certain part of the segment of the population, that is going to give it an asterisk. So that's already going to happen. You might as well try to have some fun with the format. I don't know. Am I wrong?
Well, look, I feel like the way you're describing this, I would take it one step further, and all of these different rules that you're thinking about implementing, like the crazy ones, you can abandon them whenever you want. Like if, say, you discover by round 2, all right, this one's stupid, just get rid of it. And if teams have been planning for that insane rule that you just got rid of, well, it's on them to adjust. Like, the playoffs are all about adjustments. You just now have to adjust to this stupid rule being taken away.
That's an advantage. That could have been one of the reforms. Like, give the higher seeded team one rule they could change for a series.
Oh, I like this.
Well, I've always wanted to see what would happen if you played basketball where you knew the game could be as long as 60 minutes or as short as 12. And the game, somewhere in there, somebody pulls something out of a hat, and it's a number, and nobody knows what it is, and then the game just ends at some point. It could be minute 32. And you just have to play as if the game could end at any moment. But, like, strategically, I just think that would be kind of a fun way to play basketball for a week. Why not try it here?
I think even the most ardent NBA watcher can admit that the game needs some change. Like the last 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes of an NBA game to me, like take from Tuesday to Thursday. Okay, we got to do something about that. And it feels like and look, the NBA has had declining ratings even before pre-pandemic. So like clearly something has got to change.
Here's what I actually did want to do. And like this is I can't remember what exactly. Oh, the play-in tournament, like the seedings or whatever. Because, like, there were some teams you wonder, like, okay, how much incentive is there without home court? Like, unless you're really afraid of one particular matchup in the first round or another, you think you really match up badly, like, how much does it really matter? Here would be the incentive, though. You know how they seeded these teams by hotel? And, like, the hierarchy of where you were in seeding was your hotel. If you drop in the seedings, you have to switch hotel. Or you could gain the better hotel if you rise during the play-in game.
So, like, after game one, you go from the Grand Floridian to Pop Century. Like, that's what happens.
Yes. Like,
suddenly you're doing your own laundry with a family visiting from Alabama.
Yes. Like, and you could even have to change. You could even change, like, if you beat, say, like, you upset a number 1 seed in round 2. Not only do you get to advance, you get a hotel upgrade. Like, that would really get guys playing.
Yeah, guys playing for hotel points instead of actual points.
Like, that's what journalists would do. That's what happens. Like, if you ever created some sort of media tournament, the reward wouldn't be money. It would be Marriott points. There's no question. Totally.
I don't want your money. Give me the point.
There's nothing more important to media than Marriott points. That is absolutely, it is more than gold.
Right. Or like a Bruce Springsteen vinyl.
Oh, God. Are you a Springsteen guy?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, so I'm a Springsteen guy. Like, of course, I'm very familiar with the music, and I'm a fan, and I love seeing him at his shows. I'm not the diehard that like other, particularly sports writers who happen to look exactly like you guys.
Okay, but here's the thing. Maybe an outsider's perspective. maybe something of an outsider's perspective, whether you're talking non-white or whatever, could explain this. Because Brian and I both can appreciate Springsteen and respect him. He's got a handful of songs that I really like, and again, I recognize what he is, and I recognize why he matters. But he's never really spoken to me. But then again, Brian and I we didn't set out to become part of sports media, just sort of through random things happen.
Yeah.
Do you get what it is the Springsteen thing is to white sports writers?
Explain us to us, please.
So there is a sociological aspect to this, I think, or anthropological aspect to that, in that if you go to a Bruce Springsteen show, if you look around, it's going to be a lot of, middle-aged white guys, right? That's just a reality. If you look at the state of the journalism industry, it's filled with a lot of guys. So just demographically, there's just going to be a lot of crossover.
The Venn diagrams are basically a circle.
Yeah. With that being said, I actually genuinely, of course, I really, really like Bruce Springsteen. This is not a,
No,
if you're a fan of Bruce Springsteen, I get it. It makes perfect sense to me.
No, again, he's not my favorite, but I get why. Like, I don't look at him and go, like, really? Like, I think Jimmy Buffett's popularity is inexplicable to me. Like, I just don't get it.
Is it though? Like,
it's not inexplicable. It's inexcusable, but it's not inexplicable.
Cheeseburger in Paradise comes on, and you're not bopping, man.
No, never have. But that's part of it. I'm like, all he does is write songs.
Actually, might be the worst of all of those songs.
But like, all he does is just write songs about like food and cocktails.
Yes, thank you. You just solved your own riddle, my friend.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, that's why, Andy, I object to your use of inexplicable as opposed to inexcusable. It's totally explicable.
I feel like if Guy Fieri started a band, like, he wouldn't automatically take off. Like, it would be it's not that simple.
If every one of Jimmy Buffett's songs were like the music equivalent of Catcher in the Rye, he would not be famous. You know what I mean? Like, you just hit the reason for why he is.
Andy, Guy Fieri did start a band. It's called Flavortown, and it's on Food Network every 4 times a day.
Maybe it is that simple. I don't know.
So, Sopan, I wanted to ask you this too, because you were in all three of us, we were all in bands. My high school band was named Flying Monkey. Andy's was named The Forks. Yours was called the Streetlight Band.
Yes, it was.
That's a terrible name for a band. Even
it wasn't me. It was. It was actually filled with the band was it was a bunch of, it was my friends' parents and a couple of their friends, and we were this rock cover band that played at the on the Jersey Shore bars. A lot of Fleetwood Mac and Billy Joel and some Springsteen.
Nice.
And some whatever your classic rock station played, that's what we played.
Okay, so you weren't responsible for the formation of the band. You were brought in as like a sessions guy.
Yeah, exactly. I was a sessions guy. I wasn't, Okay. I wasn't. It wasn't like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I wasn't one of the Heartbreakers. I came in. I was a hired guy later.
You played piano, right?
Yeah. So actually, I played before the pandemic. I was running a monthly jam with a couple musicians that I like to play with at a studio in Midtown. So I still try to play as often as I can.
I would like to run a monthly jam. Andy, why don't we do that? Why are we doing this? We should be running a monthly jam.
Was it a jam? Was it a public jam or a private jam?
It was private, like it was, but like we'd invite, like, if it's tough to find a whole bunch of like players that can show up, but yeah, no, if we came across somebody, we'd be like, hey, we have like a core 4 players or so, and then whoever else could come and fill in, and I play the harmonica, okay, yeah, come play the harmonica or whatever, but there was a core 4, and then other people would cycle in and out.
It is fun. I mean, I used to play drums, in our band for a while. It is really fun playing, like, because you've done different live experiences. Brian's done theater, I've done theater and improv, like, radio. But like, music is a really different experience, like live. Like it's a really, really fun, but like it's a different type of, it's just like a different type of rush as opposed to all these other things.
Here's the most embarrassing or most endearing fact about me is that I've seen Dave Matthews Band in concert close to 40 times. And in part because I appreciate the live experience. so much.
I feel like that's a poll question. Is the fact
You've been on with us for an hour and 5, so I'm going to say it's endearing.
Yeah, please. Being in front of I don't know. By the way, you guys have never played in a band together?
No. I don't think Brian and I have ever played musical instruments together. I'm 4 grades ahead of him, so there was too much separation.
Yeah, but what about as you guys got older?
Brian, I was in college,
and then we just never in a place where our instruments were at the same. Because Andy hasn't had a drum kit in a long time.
No,
no, I actually my drum kit went to my cousin, my younger cousin, who I think was still like in probably junior high when I went to college because he wanted to play, and I was like, well, before you buy a set, let him try the drums. And he didn't take to the drums, and then my uncle sold the drums and then kept the money.
Okay.
And I found out about this years later. And when it came up, my parents were like, "How could you do that? Like, you sold his drums?" And my uncle was like, "Well, I'm sure you guys bought it for him. Like, what's the big deal? I'm not paying you guys back." And they're like, "No, he bought the drums with his own money. Like, he spent his own money on those drums." And he's like, "Oh, that sucks. Yeah, I'm still not giving him the money." but my bad.
So did you have a favorite drummer growing up?
Yeah, Stuart Copeland.
Oh yeah,
from the Police. He was my absolute favorite. Did
you ever see the Police live?
No, I was so mad. I never did. Like by the time I got really old enough to see them live, it was basically synchronicity. So like if you missed that tour, and at the time nobody thought they were going to break up during Synchronicity. Like they were arguably the most popular band in the world.
Right.
And when Synchronicity came out, I think I was like 10. From there,
you still were going to need mom and dad to take you to the concert.
Right, exactly. And I never got a chance. I was really too young.
I'm sad I didn't get to see them on their reunion tour, which was I think in 2006, maybe, give or take.
Yeah, I guess I could have seen them then, but I always get skeptical about the reunion tours. Although I did a few years ago see the Replacements on a reunion tour, and they were awesome. They were amazing. They were fantastic. It was so much fun. There's really only 2 of the 4 original guys. It's basically just Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson, because Bob Stinson died, and Chris Mars, I think they just don't have a relationship.
What was the venue?
Oh, it was the Palladium.
Gotcha. Oh, I've never seen a show there. I'd love to.
Oh, it's great.
I'd love to see a show at some point in my lifetime ever.
Do you remember the band Sugar that Bob Mould had from Husker Du?
I don't.
It was the band he had.
They were pretty good.
After Husker Du. They were really good. I saw them at the Palladium, which is, it's a small venue. It's a great place to see a show, but that it's so small and so intimate. They're probably the loudest band I've ever heard in my life, including like arenas. And my friend that we got to the front and we actually moved back because it was so loud it grew unpleasant. It made the experience worse.
That was your gateway into becoming an old person.
Well, no, I actually remember reading an interview with him where he said that he suffers from tinnitus? Is that what it's called? Or tendinitis, where you just have constant ringing in your ears?
Something like that, yeah.
And he actually said that he sleeps with the TV on full blast to drown out the ringing in his ears. And I was like, well, I get it now. Attending one of your shows.
Quick update on the poll, because we're running short on time. Is the fact that Sopan Deb has seen Dave Matthews like 40 times live the worst thing about him or totally endearing? It is split right down the middle, 50-50.
But make sure, by the way, Sopan, you vote. I mean, you're allowed to vote. Please do vote.
It's a small enough sample size where right now your vote would matter. This is an exercise in democracy.
I will tell you, I've only seen one reunion show of my life, and if I'd never seen another one, it's totally fine. I think it was 2012. I went to Bonnaroo and saw the reunited Beach Boys.
Interesting.
Oh.
With Brian Wilson. They were touring for the first time together.
With Brian Wilson. Interesting.
Yeah, touring together for the first time in 50 years. It's the only time they toured together. They didn't go. They played 20 or so dates, and then they couldn't see anything. They remembered why they broke up to begin with. And then they never did anything.
Oh yeah, I guess the money's not worth it.
Cool. Even though I mean, the backing band is doing the heavy lifting. It was still cool to see.
Yeah.
You know.
No, that's great. That's actually really cool.
We have to cut you off there. This is what the book looks like. It's called Mistranslations, Meeting the Immigrant Parents Who Raised Me. You can read his work at the New York Times. You can follow him on Twitter and probably other things. And I got to figure out how to get that thing off the screen so people can see you again. There we go. Sopan, thanks so much. It is 2 a.m. where you are.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just thank you very much for doing
awesome,
this. It was
man.
so much
Thank
fun
you.
for us. Thank
I'm
you for
happy.
doing it.
This was a lot of fun. I hope that we get to do this again and that I'm not banished from the show.
No,
I'm sure you guys have much better guests to get on. So I hope,
much better.
No. Thanks, man. VSLinker.com.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that was fun.
Oh.
It's over. We ran out the clock on that one.
You still there, or is he?
He left.
Okay. Make sure to text him.
I will, absolutely.
No, that was really good, and it was. Periscope was mostly like really populated. Like at one point, it was at like almost 300. My guess is this is going to be a very big number. It's purely a guess, but I think it's going to be a really big number. Yes, it's already at 8K on Twitter.
Wow.
It's already registering 8K. Like that's huge.
Oops. I just texted Kelly. Thank you for coming on the show.
Jesus. You're incapable.
Yeah.
I finally, Joe got an okay on the piece, although I had to switch up the format a little bit. Like he wants it, I think, pretty stats driven, which is fine. But I have a feeling they're looking for very quick hitty.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Which, whatever. I'll find like 5 interesting stats and call it a day.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get it done quickly, what was your pitch?
Just sort of when last we left off, like taking a look at sort of where the like sort of how they were playing.